Isn't it just the two of us today? Why do I have to have dinner with you alone? And in such a fancy place, no less. John said, sounding exasperated. We were classmates in elementary and middle school, and we both dreamed of becoming doctors. John, the son of a doctor, used to look down on me, the youngest of three in a single-parent household, calling me poor. Honestly, I didn't want to have anything to do with him, but we accidentally met again when we were 30. He insisted we have dinner together, but he ended up arranging a group date without telling me. Nice to meet you. Thank you for booking such a lovely restaurant today. John responded with a composed face. During introductions, he bragged about his background and wealth. When it was my turn to introduce myself, he interrupted. This guy's still a college student. No, actually. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You don't need to feel intimidated by me. You are who you are, Dylan. He somehow believed I was still in college. It's one thing for him to be mistaken, but I wish he wouldn't spread that to the three women here. Plus, he kept bringing up my poverty. You need people striving for the same goals, right? But his family was so poor he couldn't even go to prep school and never became a doctor. I see, that's tough. No, it's not that. The sympathetic looks from the women made me hang my head. My name is Dylan Williams. I am the youngest of three brothers, with two older brothers 2 and 5 years older than me. My parents divorced when I was 3. I have hardly any memories of my father, who was apparently uninterested in family life and his children. My mother, Susan, said she couldn't stay in the family with him any longer. As the youngest, I was often ordered around by my 2 older brothers. Dylan, get the remote. Not now, I'm busy. Get it now. I would reluctantly obey, often in tears. At meals, if I ate too slowly, they would take their favorite foods from my plate. Hey, give me back my grapes. I was saving those for last. You should have eaten them faster. I would run to my mom, half crying. Hey, be nicer to your little brother. She would scold them while doing housework. She was a nurse. She was busy with work and taking care of us when she got home. I wanted her to scold my brothers more and pay more attention to me. But she didn't have the energy. Moreover, her nursing job required night shifts, and as a single mother, she took them to support us. Since leaving 3 small kids alone at night wasn't feasible, my grandmother would come over when mom worked nights. But I hated it when she went to work at night. I couldn't sleep well without her beside me. Mom, don't go. Every night shift, I would throw a fit at the door. If I don't work, we won't have food to eat. She would gently explain each time. Usually, I would give in, but one day, I couldn't bear to be apart from her. I don't want food. I just want to be with you. Don't leave me. Seeing me cry louder than usual and not letting go, she seemed to have a change of heart. Do you want to come to the hospital with me? She asked. Yes. That day, for the first time, I went with her to her work. This is my youngest son. He won't be a bother, so can he sleep in the break room? She explained the situation to her colleagues, looking apologetic. He's adorable. What's his name? Dylan. Dylan? That's a wonderful name. I was happy to be complimented on my name. My mom's colleagues, both nurses and doctors, were all kind to me. For the first time, I saw my mom working. Does she not get tired working all night? Isn't she hungry? My mom is amazing. I thought she looked so cool working hard. It wasn't just my mom. All the hospital staff working late into the night seemed so cool to me. Whenever she had a moment, mom would come to the break room and lie down with me. Even when she wasn't there. Her colleagues would take me to the bathroom in the middle of the night or stay with me until I fell asleep, so I didn't feel lonely. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. I'll work with you, Mom. Then we can always be together. Yes, that sounds nice. I'll have to keep being a nurse until then. She smiled as she said this. Her colleagues looked at us warmly as we talked. When I started elementary school, I could no longer accompany Mom on her night shifts. To become a doctor, you need to study hard. Do well in school, and I'll work hard at my job too. My dream of becoming a doctor never faded, and I diligently attended school. In 6th grade, we each had to present our future dreams in front of the class. My dream is to become a doctor. I said this without hesitation. There was one other person who said their dream was to become a doctor. It was John. During recess, he came up to me. "Dylan, you know not just anyone can become a doctor, right?" He said in a mocking tone that irritated me. "What do you mean? The entrance exams for medical school are really tough. Plus, you have to go to college for 6 years. It costs a lot of money for prep school and all. Your family is too poor for that." "We're not poor. But Dylan, you always have hand-me-downs. That's your brother's name on this, right?" He pointed and laughed at the names of my brothers on my gym bag and ruler. As the youngest, I indeed always used hand-me-downs. However, I was never the type to care about such things, so I had always used hand-me-downs without any issue. It was at this moment that I realized some people saw me as poor because of my hand-me-downs. I go to prep school twice a week to become a doctor. Your family can't afford that, right? You should give up. He thought he was being kind. After saying what he wanted, he left the classroom satisfied. I need to study. He was probably right, we likely couldn't afford prep school. "Mr. Smith, do I need to go to prep school to become a doctor?" I quietly asked my teacher, Mr. Smith. "If you have a strong will, you don't need prep school." He said this and printed out extra homework sheets with advanced problems for me. I fully support students who work hard towards their dreams. If you ever have questions, come to me anytime. I was fortunate to have a supportive teacher, and I improved my skills without needing prep school. Then I became a middle school student. My area was quite rural, without any integrated private middle and high schools. Some kids left home for private schools starting in middle school. But most of my elementary school classmates went to the same public middle school. John was one of them. We hadn't interacted since then, but right after entering middle school, he started picking on me. "I heard you were number 1. Just don't get cocky, it was only because I had a cold." I had ranked first in a test at the beginning of school, beating him. He was clearly upset about losing to me. His family is super poor. "That uniform is a hand-me-down from your brother, right? It's so dirty." He would interrupt my conversations with the girls in class, belittling me with jokes about my poverty. He needed to be the top student and bask in the attention. It was annoying. I tried to avoid him. When I scored higher than him, he would harass me out of spite. So, I stopped solving all the questions, even when I knew the answers. When John ranked first in the next test, he came to me, grinning. "Dylan, what rank did you get?" "8th. See, poverty makes your grades worse." I got first place easily. Poor people who can't afford prep school should just give up on being doctors and start working after high school. "I'll think about it." I realized it was wiser not to provoke him, so I answered him nonchalantly to keep him satisfied. By deliberately scoring around 8th place, he eventually stopped seeing me as a threat. He maintained his top rank and went on to a prestigious private high school in New York. I attended the local public high school. Finally, in high school, I was free from him. Years passed, and now I'm 30. "Hey, wait. Dylan, is that you?" At the airport, someone suddenly called out to me from behind. It's me, John. We were in the same class in elementary and middle school. Remember?" "Wait, what?" The John I knew was chubby and wore thick round glasses. But the John in front of me was tall, slim, and didn't wear glasses. "John? What happened to your glasses?" "Really? Almost everyone wears contacts nowadays." "Well, I guess poor people wouldn't know that. It's not about being poor, I just have good eyesight." Dealing with him is going to be a pain. Memories of the past came flooding back. Seeing me stay silent, he continued. "I'm at the Advanced Medical Center now. I'm a doctor, of course. What about you, Dylan?" "I'm at university now." "University? You're still a student at 30? Well, I guess that's what happens when you're poor." "No, it's not like that. Don't blame the world. You worked hard after high school, saved money, and finally made it to college. I respect your effort. It not that. He barely listened to me and kept sympathizing. As your senior in life, feel free to reach out anytime. Give me your contact info. No, you're probably too busy, it's fine. Don't be shy. Come on, give me your phone. He forced me to exchange contact information with him. Oh. I have a meeting at 1 p.m. I gotta go. Good luck with university. He made a show of being busy and left. I figured he would be too busy to contact me, being a doctor and all, but 2 days later, he got in touch. Dylan, do you have a part-time job this Friday evening? No, I don't. He was completely convinced I was a current university student. At this point, I lost the will to correct him. Let's grab dinner. No, I'm fine. Don't be shy. I'll treat you to something you can't afford as a student. Look forward to it. Anyway, I have a surgery now, so I'll call you later. He abruptly ended the call. Why is he bothering me again? I haven't even done anything to provoke his jealousy this time. But if I refuse his invitation, it will probably become more troublesome. I just want him to lose interest in me without causing a fuss. I thought of various excuses to cancel the plan, but none seemed likely to work with him. Friday came quickly, and I reluctantly headed to the designated restaurant. I gasped when I saw the place. It was a fancy French restaurant. John had told me, just don't wear jeans, so I was dressed in chinos and a button-up shirt. However, everyone entering the restaurant was dressed elegantly and stylishly. Maybe I should just leave. I thought, but then I heard his voice. You're early. I turned around to see John in a stylish checkered suit with perfectly styled hair. I'm a bit underdressed. I'll go change. You go on ahead. You don't have any fancy clothes, right? I'm not that mean. He handed me a paper bag. Inside was a complete suit and leather shoes. Here, take this and change. I can't accept something so expensive. Just take it, poor university student. Besides, it's to save me the embarrassment of being seen with you. Hurry up before they arrive. Go change. He pointed to the restroom at a nearby station. Wait, aren't we supposed to have dinner just the two of us? It seemed like he had invited others, but I had no chance to ask. I didn't like owing him a favor, but I had no choice but to comply. Even a fool looks presentable in a good suit. John smirked as he saw me in the new clothes and swiftly entered the restaurant. I hurried after him. The table we were shown had 6 sets of forks and knives. Isn't it just the two of us today? Why do I have to have dinner with you alone? And in such a fancy place, no less. He said, sounding exasperated. You were the one who invited me. I didn't even want to come. I resisted inwardly. Then, the staff brought 3 women to our table. Nice to meet you. Thank you for booking such a lovely restaurant today. The 3 women who arrived were young and beautiful. Is this a group date? John straightened up, clearly trying to impress the women. He didn't tell me. When I looked at him, he briefly made eye contact with me but quickly looked away. I sighed deeply in my heart. I struggle with meeting new people. Especially young, lively, and noisy ones. While my mood plummeted, he beamed at the women. Thanks for coming. Sorry, one person couldn't make it because of an emergency patient. He apologized dramatically, placing his hand on his chest. Don't apologize. Saving lives is our duty. We sat down, ordered food, and began introducing ourselves. I heard they are all 26-year-old nurses. Their names are Emily, Sarah, and Emma. Apparently, they were college classmates. They are in their 4th year as working professionals. Despite my initial impression, they were well-mannered and understood the appropriate behavior for the situation. Likely due to their professional experience. Next, it was our turn to introduce ourselves. John eagerly started. I'm 30 and work at the Advanced Medical Center. My specialty is cardiac surgery. The Advanced Medical Center? That's where only the best go. Amazing. The women praised him, and he basked in it, continuing his boastful stories. His father was also a doctor who founded a cardiovascular hospital, and he planned to take over the family practice someday. Despite being smart since childhood, he stayed in the local middle school to keep his mother from feeling lonely. For high school, he attended a prestigious private school in New York, where he topped his class. He then got into a famous private university, the university, on his first try. The university has very high tuition, right? And the donation fees are enormous. They murmured in amazement. I, too, was hearing about his high school and university for the first time and was surprised. John was genuinely a rich kid. No wonder he never understood me at all. My parents spared no expense for their kids. I'm very grateful to them. That's why I want to take over the hospital soon and repay them. That's wonderful. They looked at him with eyes full of admiration. I was inwardly exasperated at him playing the role of the dutiful son. Is this how men charm women? I wondered if they could see his true nature. I was completely a spectator. As I observed the four of them to pass the time, suddenly the conversation turned to me. Dylan, do you also work at the Advanced Medical Center? No, I'm at university. He's still a university student. No, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Don't feel intimidated by me. You are who you are, Dylan. I thought I had a chance to clear up the misunderstanding, but he didn't listen at all. He was acting like a supportive friend. We went to the same elementary and middle school. He also wanted to become a doctor, so I gave him a lot of advice. Oh, you were close friends. You need someone to strive towards the same goal with, right? But his family was poor. So he couldn't go to prep school and eventually didn't become a doctor. I see. No, that's not at all. The sympathetic looks from the women were painful, and I hung my head. Dylan, where are you from? North Dakota. It's a really rural place. He used to bike 6 miles to middle school every day. I got driven every day, though. Even though Emma asked me, John answered for me. What does your mom do for work? She asked me again. She's a nurse, right? You used to say you wanted to become a doctor and work with her when you were a kid. If only you had a bit more financial support like I did, you could have made that dream come true. It's a shame. John always managed to bring up my poverty to contrast it with his wealth. After a few drinks, he got even more vocal about my poverty. He started sharing more about my hand-me-down gym clothes and uniforms, how I always went for the leftovers at school lunch. And even how today's outfit was entirely prepared by him. The three women seemed like kind people. They looked unsure how to react to my poverty story. Especially Emma, who was glaring at John with what seemed like anger for belittling me. But he didn't notice their reactions at all. It's nice that you could reunite with such a wonderful friend. Emily finally uttered some non-committal words. But it was those words that made me finally realize. To John, I was just there to make him look better. Realizing this made me furious, but if he was going to call me poor, then I'd fully embrace it. Since this meal was on him, I'd eat as much as I could. I decided to order some expensive wine too. I silently kept eating. I realized it was a 4-against-1 situation. I didn't know what they thought of John, but as nurses, they were adept at keeping the doctor happy. He remained in a good mood throughout. They chatted without involving me, but Emma occasionally glanced at me. Wow, those mussels were delicious. I might order 2 more plates. I muttered as I came out of the restroom and saw Emma walking towards me. Are you from Fargo, North Dakota? How did you know? Have you lived there? Just a little bit when I was young. Dylan. Yes? Is your mom still a nurse? Yes, she is. She's quite a veteran nurse now. I joked, but she didn't laugh. That's a lovely name. Her words triggered a memory. I suddenly recalled following my mom to her night shifts. Do you know my mom? Not your mom. I remember you. She remembered me? What did she mean? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember a girl like Emma. Seeing me puzzled, she smiled. My mom is a nurse too, and she worked with your mom. I used to follow my mom to her night shifts. Ah. A faint memory of a little girl came to mind. I was 6 years old then. I was used to following my mom to her night shifts, thinking about whose portrait I'd draw that day. And when I got to the hospital, there was a little girl sitting in my usual spot. Were you the girl I slept next to? Yes. Since Emma and I are 4 years apart, she was 2 years old at the time. That day, her father couldn't come home no matter what. Even so, her mother couldn't take a day off work because they were short-staffed. So, she reluctantly brought Emma to her night shift. Dylan, be Emma's big brother today, okay? As the youngest, I'd always been around older people, so this was my first time taking care of someone 4 years younger than me. What makes a 2-year-old happy, anyway? I poked the little girl's cheeks and tickled her feet, trying to gauge her reactions. Meanwhile, she tore my precious picture book and ruined the drawings I made for her within seconds. But I never got angry. I didn't feel even a shred of anger. Having a little sister is so cute. A girl smaller than me smiled, showing her tiny teeth. It made me feel incredibly happy. Look at this. Emma held out her phone. It showed a picture of little me and little Emma sleeping with our cheeks pressed together. On that day, you put me to sleep. It was the only time I went with my mom to her night shift, but I always wanted to meet you again. I was impressed that she remembered such things from when she was 2 years old. Probably because I was really happy that you played Big Brother for me that day. I was genuinely happy when she said that. Coincidences are amazing, I murmured, but she shook her head. It wasn't a coincidence. I became a nurse because I wanted to meet you, Dylan. What? I was shocked by her words. She moved from North Dakota before she started elementary school, but she could never forget me, even though we only met for 1 day. When she started school and could articulate her feelings, Emma told her mother about me. Then, her mother said, Dylan is going to be a doctor in the future, so if you work in a hospital, you might meet him. Your mom's amazing. Psychic powers? She said you declared it in front of everyone. You said if you became a doctor and worked with your mom, you'd always be together. Back then, I just wanted to be with my mom. I remember her tearing up a bit when she heard my words. At the time, I wondered why she was crying, but now that I'm older, I understand how happy she must have been. Suddenly, I noticed Emma staring at me. Dylan, you're a doctor, right? Her tone was more serious than before, and I felt a bit puzzled, but it wasn't something I was hiding. It was just that John had introduced me inaccurately. I honestly shared my background. As her mother said, I kept aiming to become a doctor, fulfilling my childhood promise to my mother. I was aware that our family wasn't as wealthy as John's. And life in the Williams household with a single mother and 3 siblings was tough at times. But my mom always smiled and raised us well. Wanting to repay her quickly, I studied hard. I entered a local public high school as a scholarship student. I went to a national university with a scholarship, worked part-time, and managed to pass the national exam. I proudly earned my medical license. Assistant Professor Williams, do you enjoy your research? I smiled and nodded at her words. It seemed she had figured everything out. I originally aimed to work with my mother in a hospital, but at some point, I became interested in research. I want to save even more people than I do now. To do that, I need to develop new drugs. After graduating from college, I became a graduate student and immersed myself in research. Fortunately, my thesis gained attention, and I managed to complete a 4-year program in 3 years. I stayed at the university and, as luck would have it, a position as an assistant professor opened up, and I became one this year. Why are you deceiving John? He still thinks you're a college student, doesn't he? She asked, puzzled. You might not believe this, but... I explained that he had always teased me about being poor, and when we reconnected recently after 15 years, he still mocked me for being poor and mistakenly thought I was a college student. He was pretending to be a gentleman, she said, looking thoroughly exasperated. Let's go. She linked her arm with mine and pulled me back to our seats. Emma, thanks for keeping Dylan company. John smiled at Emma, but she ignored him and spoke to the 2 women. Dylan is a doctor and an assistant professor at a university. He's researching Alzheimer's. Emily and Sarah turned to look at me in surprise. Now that you mention it, I think I've seen your face somewhere before. Weren't you in the newspaper recently? Something about collaborating with a British company on research. Sarah was right, our lab was working on a joint research project with a famous British pharmaceutical company. Thank you for reading that small article in the local paper. The three of them exchanged glances and laughed. We work in neurosurgery at different hospitals. So, we were all very interested in the Alzheimer's article. We have to keep studying. Even though we can't compare to doctors. Emily and Sarah nodded behind Emma. I was genuinely impressed by how capable they were. By the way, when I saw your name in that article, I had a hunch. Emma said with a mischievous smile. I see, that's how she knew I was an assistant professor. Dylan Williams. It seemed that my name had brought us together. I felt grateful to my parents for giving me such a wonderful name. Meanwhile, John stood behind us, so shocked he couldn't speak, his eyes wide. You are a doctor? And an assistant professor at 30? You must be joking. He turned red with anger. Why don't you believe he is a doctor? Because he was poor and couldn't afford cram school. How could someone like that get into medical school? He never complained about being poor. He accepted his circumstances and fulfilled his dream. You don't need cram school or a lot of money to achieve your dreams. John, you might not have had money problems thanks to your parents. But your heart is poorer than anyone else's. Emma told John he had a poor heart, and he was left speechless, looking down. Always wealthy and now a doctor, he had been pampered and flattered by those around him, but her words seemed to have struck a nerve. Let's call it a night, we have work tomorrow. Emily broke the tense atmosphere. John quickly disappeared somewhere. Maybe he went to the bathroom? I had been planning to let him pay for the meal since he intended to use me as a foil. But under these circumstances, I felt reluctant. Even though it wasn't my fault, I decided to split the bill with him this time. Isn't John taking too long? I asked a staff member, as he hadn't returned even after a long wait. They told me he had left about 10 minutes ago. And he had already paid the bill. Did I go too far? Emma seemed to be concerned about him. I think your words are definitely reaching him. John isn't really a bad guy from the start. He's just been a bit spoiled. Even though he had money, he worked hard to become a doctor. We all know that becoming a doctor isn't easy. Let's both do our best. With that, I parted ways with them. 3 months flew by. I hadn't exchanged contact information with Emma, so I hadn't been in touch with any of them, including John, during those 3 months. Dr. Williams, you have a visitor. One day, John showed up at my lab. I invited him in. You really are an associate professor. His eyes had completely changed as he looked at me. I'm really sorry for everything. He suddenly apologized. Emma called me emotionally poor, and it made me realize a lot. I've sometimes had trouble getting along with my colleagues at work. And I realized it was my problem. She was worried about you too. You should contact her. Dylan, can we redo that mixer? What? This time, let's do it at a top-notch restaurant. No. That's not the point. I was once again exasperated by John, who thought money was the solution. I just want to treat everyone to something nice. It makes people happy. Well, that's true, but he had definitely changed over these 3 months. He chose a restaurant thinking about the people he'd be dining with. There was no trace of the old John who used to flaunt his wealth. So, we decided to have another mixer with the same group. The event was lively with conversations only colleagues could have. John now saw me as an equal doctor and listened attentively to the 3 nurses. John, what do you think of this analysis? Before I knew it, we had become close enough to consult each other about work. John might get an urgent call, so no alcohol for him. Today, the 5 of us were gathered at John's house. Come on, let's make a toast. Good job today. Cheers. Beer cans clinking with friends were better than wine at a fancy restaurant. We had become irreplaceable friends. So, Dylan, did you tell Emma how you feel? She'll hear. I'll tell her soon. I'll let you know how it goes. The truth is, Emma and I aren't officially dating yet, but we do meet up occasionally. It made me really happy to know that she had been thinking about me since she was 2. Meeting Emma again after becoming a doctor feels like a miracle. I want to cherish this miracle. Here's a good luck charm. What, a love charm? Come on, go for it. I never imagined receiving a love charm from a friend at 30, just before telling someone how I felt. John, you're still a bit off. I chuckled. But I understood that he was thinking about me in his own way. All right. I have to give my all too. I made up my mind. Chris. Oh no, excuse me, Mr. Johnson, it seems I'm still stuck with the old habit from back then. You can call me whatever you want. Feel free to call me by whatever name you like. All right, I understand. But you should stop speaking in such a formal way to me soon. By the way, it's about this afternoon's schedule. My name is Chris, and I'm 31 years old. I was in a taxi with my secretary Emily and we were reviewing today's schedule. I was a designer at a major graphics company. And since I'd taken on more responsibilities, I had to review my schedule even while commuting, making my days extremely busy. But I found my life fulfilling. By the way, you stayed at the office last night, didn't you? Yeah. I was swamped with work yesterday, and since there was an early meeting today, I ended up sleeping at my desk. Okay then, there's some time before the next meeting, I'll have the taxi take you home. I won't insist on taking a shower. But please at least change your suit. Some people attending today's meeting were also there yesterday. I sighed softly and slouched while Emily stretched to give the taxi driver instructions. Although I said my days were fulfilling. The increasing number of subordinates who admired me and the frequent interactions with top executives from various companies meant that I constantly had to be mindful of how I appeared, which was the only real burden in my current life. However, the attention I got from people then was different from the unpleasant stares I had used to get. As I was looking out the taxi window and thinking about this, I noticed it starting to rain. Emily muttered softly beside me, "Oh, it started raining after all." I took some painkillers out of my bag and gave it to her. "You have migraines, right? Here, take this." When I handed her the medicine, Emily looked surprised and then smiled gently. "Oh, you remembered, how nostalgic. I have known this sweet and tender woman since before we both worked at this company. That was back when I was a student who constantly worried about other people's stares. When I was in my first year of middle school, I had been weak since childhood and always carried various medications. These included stomachache medicine, painkillers, and even allergy relief medicine in case of a sudden allergic reaction. With such a frail body, my parents stopped me, so I only attended PE when I was in good condition, and basically observed in the shade. As a result, I had the palest skin among the boys my age. In middle school, my friends from elementary school became busy with club activities. Of course, I couldn't join both sports clubs and other non-sport clubs as well, so I did not belong to any extracurricular activities. I became an outcast from this time, and I was completely isolated from other students by the end of the first term. After school, I always went home sadly by myself, passing by where the students of the sports club were practicing. I couldn't count how many times I cursed my weak body. However, a turning point came in those lonely days. One day, after I had packed up to go home as usual and was walking past the track team practicing energetically. I can't even run a lap around the field, but the track team members are amazing, running laps around the school with such vigor. As I mumbled to myself and walked out the school gate, I noticed a girl sitting hunched over. She was probably a track team member. I thought she might be taking a break and was about to walk past her. As I was about to pass by, I heard her labored breathing. I instinctively approached her and asked, "Are you okay?" The girl looked up at me with a dazed expression and said, "My head hurts." I didn't know what to do, but I opened the extra bottle of water I was carrying to take my medicine and gave it to her. She slowly drank the water and eventually calmed down. After a while, she gently asked me, who had been sitting still next to her, "Thank you, we are in the same school, right? Are you 6th grader maybe?" I was startled to realize she was quite beautiful and nervously replied, "Yes." "Come on, you saved my life, why do you look so sorry?" The girl smiled teasingly at my embarrassed reaction. This girl would later become my secretary Emily. Emily was 2 years older than me, 8th grader at the same middle school, and the leader of the track team. That day, Emily wasn't feeling well and struggled during her run. I always get headaches on rainy or cloudy days like this. Isn't that a migraine? A migraine? Emily seemed unfamiliar with migraines, so I briefly explained. Wow, I didn't know that. I thought it was dehydration or something. What? Dehydration is serious. Really? I get it all the time before competitions. Emily was overly active, shone too brightly for me. I wanted to help her somehow and pulled out a small pouch from my bag. Please take this if you'd like, I have some headache medicine I use often. When I handed her the medicine, Emily looked surprised but then smiled warmly. Really? Thank you. Then here, take this little something in return. Then she pulled a candy bar out of her pocket and handed it to me. Oh, you don't have to do this. Besides, having a candy bar outside like this is. No worries, go ahead. She was taller than me at the time, and smiled and handed me the candy bar. I accepted her kindness with both hands and took a bite. Wow! This is good. Hey, you look like as if you've never had a candy bar before. At that moment, my heart raced at her playful smile. By the way, don't you participate in any clubs? You should join us. Well, I have a weak body. When I declined apologetically, Emily thought for a moment before suggesting, how about the library committee? We're short on members. And I can hardly attend due to my busy club schedule. I thought I might be able to handle the library committee and was about to smile and nod at Emily. I heard running footsteps and a loud voice. Emily! What are you doing slacking off? It was one of my classmates, Jason, with tan skin and a lean but muscular build. Jason smiled at Emily, but his gaze towards me was cold. I'm not slacking off, I'm recruiting. Hearing Emily's words, Jason frowned as he looked at me. Then, he started laughing mockingly. Oh, this guy? No way. He skips PE because he's weak. It's impossible. Jason looked down on me laughing, but to my frustration, I couldn't say anything back and couldn't look up. Suddenly, I heard a dull thud and Jason's pained shout, ouch. I quickly looked up to see that Emily had hit Jason on the head. You don't talk like that, do you? It's an order from the team leader. Apologize to him. Well, I'm sorry. Jason's eyes welled up with tears, and I quickly nodded. Emily giggled, overlooking us, and said, All right, Chris, see you soon. So Jason, let's go back. Cover for me in case that the coach gets mad at me. She then energetically ran off. Jason followed, holding his head. At that moment, I realized that the real cause of this heartbeat was my first love, watching Emily's running back. After that, I immediately applied to join the library committee. As Emily had said, the library committee was unpopular and there were empty positions, so I immediately began to work as a member. Even if it was only for a short time after school. Though Emily rarely attended the committee meetings, she napped and got scolded by the committee head whenever she attended. During my time on the committee, I developed a love for reading books on art and design. And it was then that I decided to become a graphic designer. A year later, Emily graduated from middle school, and my first love ended without me even getting her contact information. When I started my second year, my school life became much more miserable. Oh great, am I with Emily's stalker in this class too? That Jason was in most of the classes with me. Jason was always one of the popular students in every class and had several cronies. Almost all my classmates started giving me cold looks because of a single word from Jason. Hey, Emily was last year's leader of the track team, and she was quite pretty, right? Was Chris her stalker? Oh yeah, he became a member of the same library committee with Emily because she talked to him. Isn't that creepy? That's seriously messed up. Voices mocking me and disdainful glances came at me from all directions. No, Huh? What are you saying? Can't hear you with that tiny voice. Oh, but don't speak too loudly or you might get sick, right? Jason and his cronies laughed. I was so defeated by the pressure that I couldn't say anything back. From that on, the only place I found peace at school was the library after classes. I continued to study design alone, enduring Jason's mocking and the cold stares from others. However, there was a silver lining when the student poster I designed won the top prize in the middle school category. Even so, I didn't have friends to brag to when the award sat alone in the corner of my room. In my third year, I was no longer in the same class as Jason, but my bad reputation had spread throughout the grade. As a result, I had no peers to talk to, and the last page of my yearbook was blank. My lonely middle school life quietly came to an end. I remembered feeling a mix of frustration and envy when I saw Jason crying tears of joy at graduation, though he had caused my misery. Mr. Johnson. We've arrived. Ah. Oh, we're already here. Next thing I knew, the cab had arrived in front of my house. Emily looked worriedly at me since I had been staring blankly into the past. I'll wait here. I've informed the office that I'll be returning with you. Okay. I'll be back soon. Hearing her call me Mr. Johnson felt strange since I was thinking about the Emily from back then. After graduating from middle school, I went abroad to study art and started a business with friends I met there. My efforts paid off, and our graphic design company grew into a major firm. I faced daily challenges as both a designer and vice president, but my younger self could never have imagined this future. Nor could I have imagined reuniting with my first love as an adult. However, our current relationship was strictly professional at that time, and I couldn't dwell on the past. I didn't even know if Emily was married. We've never discussed personal matters, and bringing up old feelings would only cause confusion. Thanks for waiting. Let's head back to the office. After taking a shower and changing into a new suit, I returned to the taxi where Emily was working on her laptop. As the taxi started moving, she stopped typing, checked her watch, and said, "We're heading to the office now. Please wait in the entrance lobby. As the sales department has informed me of some changes to the meeting documents, and I'll need to retrieve them." I see. Emily's diligent approach to her work always made me straighten up. She consistently anticipated my needs and handled schedule management flawlessly. Even for sudden dinner meetings, she always had a suitable restaurant booked in advance, proving herself to be an exceptionally capable secretary. I didn't feel deserving of such an excellent secretary. I had never seen anyone at the office attempt to flirt with Emily despite her remarkable beauty. People probably see her as unattainable, just like in her school days. I would wonder why someone so talented and beautiful was working as my secretary. A familiar streets came into view as these thoughts crossed my mind. We arrived at our company, which was a large white building, both tall and wide. Our company valued merit and freedom. So the area around the entrance was filled with stylish employees in business casual attire. And some were having lunch on the courtyard benches while others worked on laptops. It created a scene reminiscent of a college campus during lunch break, making the security guard at the entrance seem out of place. As I observed the surroundings, Emily exited the taxi first, opened my door, and stood slightly behind me as we walked to the main entrance. "Welcome back, Mr. Johnson." "Thanks. Keep up the good work this afternoon." The security guard opened the big front glass door for us and let us in. When I go inside, it was the entrance hall with predominantly white, featured a 3-story high ceiling. In the large marble reception area, the reception staff all greeted us with smiles. The sophisticated yet free-spirited atmosphere of the company perfectly embodied the dream my partners and I had when we started it. "Mr. Johnson, I'll go get the documents now. Please wait here for a moment." Emily said this and walked briskly towards the elevator hall. My stomach growled as I watched her go and then moved to sit on a nearby sofa. "Oh, I haven't eaten anything since yesterday." I headed towards the nearby sandwich place as I thought Emily wouldn't be back soon. Once inside, I was momentarily overwhelmed by the wide selection of bread and salads as well as sandwiches. Before I started going out for business every day like I do now, I used to buy my meals here. I grabbed a sandwich and one candy bar and joined the line at the register. The line was very crowded as it was just past noon. I heard someone in the line ahead of me muttering. I admired their diligence while thinking he was practicing for a presentation. As I carefully placed the sandwich I bought in my bag to avoid crushing it, I heard footsteps approaching and a man's voice calling out, "Hey." I looked up to see a man in a suit staring straight at me. As I tried to remember where I had seen him before, he walked closer and I noticed he was smirking. As I recognized the familiar sneer, the man spoke first. Chris? What are you doing here? To my surprise, it was Jason. Jason. I looked closely at his face and then at the ID card hanging around his neck. Sure enough, it bore Jason's name and his department in the sales division. I was stunned by this sudden reunion, but Jason sighed loudly and frowned. Jason? Since when have you been able to call me so casually? Huh? Casually? Jason showed obvious irritation. Yeah, you're calling me by my first name. Who do you think you are? It had been a long time since someone had spoken to me so rudely, and I was bewildered. You work here. As I muttered this to myself, Jason leaned closer and said, Don't you know basic business manners? When you do something rude, you have to apologize first. He lightly tapped my shoulder with the documents he was holding. What is the biggest loser in our grade doing here? It seemed Jason assumed I didn't belong at this company. I surprisingly felt nothing though I faced the person who had made my school days miserable. Jason's attitude was irritating, but it didn't provoke anger. Instead, I felt a strange nostalgia for how little he had changed. You're right. I'm sorry. It's been a long time, Jason. I said this with a smile, and Jason's frown deepened. Huh? Don't you answer my question? What are you doing here? And you don't even have a visitor's pass. Did you sneak in? Jason laughed mockingly. His behavior was infuriating, but I couldn't rise to his bait. As the vice president of this company, I had to maintain composure. If I lost my temper and word got out, it would be trouble. Because if it became known that I, as vice president, was angry with Jason here, he would definitely be left out by his boss. Even if he lacked social graces, I couldn't let my temper ruin his career. I decided to endure Jason's arrogant and disrespectful attitude. Hey, are you listening? Yeah, I'm listening. Actually, As I was about to reveal my identity, Jason cut me off and started laughing. I get it. You're here trying to pitch to us, aren't you? I've seen guys like you, bottom-tier salesmen who don't know their place. Oh, no, it's not that. I tried to deny Jason's assumption, but he kept talking. You disappeared after middle school, right? Did you drop out and get a job? There's no way you'd be here otherwise. Jason continued to laugh and look down on me. I decided to change the subject as I realized he wouldn't listen. So, Jason, are you an employee here? Jason showed me his employee ID and raised his voice proudly. Of course. See, it says sales department. I would have been the sales manager if you had met me a bit later. Wow, that's impressive. Jason's arrogant and condescending demeanor made me worry about the future of the sales department. But I couldn't spend more time talking to him. Emily was probably back at the entrance by now. I decided to wrap things up and move on to my next task. Well, I have to go. It was nice seeing you. As I tried to walk past Jason, he grabbed my arm with a smirk. Where do you think you're going? The exit is that way. Huh? Jason pointed towards the entrance. No, I need to go to the entrance hall. What are you talking about? Get out of here. Don't make me repeat myself. But Jason laughed heartily, seeing my hesitation. Can't you see how useless you are? You're wearing a nice suit, but everyone here looks at yourself, not your outfit. Someone like you would be turned away at the door. Jason's mocking and rude behavior increased my frustration. What is he talking about? I muttered under my breath, but Jason heard me with his sharp ears. Huh? Did you say something? He shouted. Realizing that staying longer would only make things worse, I tried to think of a way to leave. But Jason raised his voice again. Get out of here, you trespasser. Do you want to get reported? He said with a smirk. Jason's voice echoed around, and some employees peeked from the second and third floor corridors. Employees around the reception area also looked worriedly in our direction. Jason exaggerated his volume since he sensed the attention. Someone like you won't be taken seriously by anyone here. But I reached the limit of my patience and was about to reveal my identity without caring about Jason or the onlookers. I heard the sound of heels clicking on the floor. Turning towards the sound, I saw Emily walking towards us with documents in hand and her posture straight and her eyes fixed on me. Before I could speak, Jason approached Emily. Emily. Long time no see. It's my lucky day to meet you, always with the executives. Hey, don't ignore me. Emily didn't even glance at the elated Jason and walked straight to me. She looked between my eyes and her watch standing in front of me. He's a trespasser. I just caught him. Jason was smiling and talking to Emily as if he was obsessed with her beauty. Emily kept ignoring Jason and took a deep breath. There you are, Mr. Johnson. What? Mr. Johnson. Jason seemed genuinely shocked by Emily's words. Sorry, I stopped by the sandwich place, and it took longer than expected. I was looking for you, Vice President. No worries, there's still time before the meeting. What? Vice President. This guy. Jason's confused voice echoed through the entrance again. Emily frowned at the sound and looked directly at Jason with a sharp gaze. Jason, what are you talking about? Even if we have a history, your disrespectful behavior is intolerable. Emily's usual calm and composed tone carried a cold edge. But, Emily, I thought you were joking. However, Jason continued to fawn over Emily. It seemed that talking to Emily made him happier than dealing with the current situation. Seeing Emily take a deep breath, I couldn't help but lower my eyes. This man is Mr. Chris Johnson, our vice president and a leading designer representing our company. A regular employee like you showing such disrespect could have serious consequences. Emily's voice rang out in the entrance. Jason nodded along at first, but soon he froze in place. Wait, really? Is he? Jason's head shook in disbelief as he alternated glances between Emily and me. Emily cleared her throat and said, "Let's discuss this matter with the sales manager." She looked coldly at Jason. Wait, please. I didn't know. Right, Chris? You understand, don't you? Jason looked as if he were begging for his life. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him seeing the sweat on his forehead and tears in his eyes. However, I wondered if forgiving Jason here was the right thing to do. Such disrespect towards the company's upper management would normally result in suspension for any regular employee. Therefore, I considered whether Jason should face the same consequences. I can't believe Chris is the vice president. Jason was still in shock and began to stammer. Emily softened her tone and beckoned him closer. Jason, come here. In a near-dazed state, Jason bent down as Emily instructed and leaned closer to her. Then, in the next moment, there was a dull thud from Jason's direction. Ouch! I glanced over at Jason and saw him holding his head. It seemed that Emily had given him a light knock on the head. If you want forgiveness, apologize first. Emily's words made Jason instantly deflate. He muttered, I'm sorry. I apologize for my disrespect. I felt a wave of nostalgia seeing Emily standing with arms crossed and looking down at Jason. This made me realize that Jason's past behavior didn't matter anymore, and I let out a small laugh. What are you laughing at? Excuse me, Chris? No, Mr. Johnson? Oh, sorry. I just felt nostalgic. It's okay, Jason. I'll let this go, but please don't behave like this with anyone else. When I spoke gently, Jason, teary-eyed, nodded. Emily smiled kindly, a rare sight during work. But I really didn't know. I had no idea you were the vice president of this company. Jason said so apologetically. I studied design abroad after graduating. I started this company with people I met there, so it's no surprise you didn't know. When I explained, Jason looked at me with admiration. Art studies abroad? That's amazing, he said excitedly. Then, he looked down again and looked embarrassed. I'm sorry about back then. I was awful. I completely lost to the person you are now. I'll try to think more before I act. Jason's apology was undoubtedly for our middle school days. Even though his apology couldn't change the past or turn my middle school years into good memories, I felt that not forgiving him would leave me carrying this burden forever. So, I decided to smile gently and forgive him. It's okay. And you don't need to change your attitude. After all, we are old classmates, right? Tears welled up in Jason's eyes at my words. Then he said with a voice that seemed squeezed out, "Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed of how petty I've been." Emily looked relieved at the scene. "But now that I think about it, why did you hate me back then? I never did anything to you, did I?" "Oh, that was..." Jason glanced at Emily. Sensing something, Emily laughed a little and said, "It was probably jealousy. Jason confessed to me at my graduation, saying I was his first love." Jason blushed and gave an embarrassed smile. Emily had stolen the first love of both men here, so she seemed quite the heartbreaker. After a moment, Emily checked her watch and looked at me. "Chris, it's about time." "Oh, right. Jason, we need to go now. Let's catch up properly another time." Sure." Emily and I said our goodbyes to Jason and headed towards the elevator hall. As we got into the elevator, Jason ran after us and shouted, "Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson," while waving his hand until the doors closed. As the elevator doors shut and the space grew quiet, I let out a big sigh. Emily chuckled as she reminisced. It seemed she found the recent scene amusing. "You laugh too much, poor Jason." "No, that's not why I'm laughing," Emily said with a mischievous smile. While I looked puzzled, she continued. "When Jason mentioned that I was his first love, you had quite the face, as if saying, 'You too?'" "What?" "Well, Emily kept smiling like a little devil seeing me fumbled for words. While considering whether to share my old feelings, a question crossed my mind. "By the way, Emily, weren't you originally Mr. Smith's secretary? You became my secretary later, but did you know about me?" Emily stopped laughing and looked at me with a slightly lingering smile. "Yes, of course. That's why I requested it myself. I believed my skills would be best utilized working with you." "That can't be true. You're so talented." "No, it's true. Mr. Smith understood quickly because he's romantic." Emily's words made me puzzled. "I heard he proposed to his wife with 100 roses in a helicopter at night." I knew he was romantic, but how does it relate to? When I said that, Emily flashed a mischievous smile and began checking her documents. It seemed she wouldn't reveal the answer until I figured it out myself. The elevator doors opened, revealing the hallway leading to our destination, the conference room. Before opening the conference room door, I opened the soda I bought earlier and took a sip to refocus. Emily watched this and said, "100 roses are lovely, but I'd be just as happy with 100 candy bars." No flower language. But it holds special meaning for us, right, Chris? Meaningfully. I understood everything with her words, opened the conference room door with a flushed face and got ready for the meeting. "If you can solve this, I'll give you my position. But I doubt a high school dropout like you can manage it." What's the matter? Go ahead and try." At the company's social event, the department head, Brian, challenged me with a difficult math problem. He clearly believed there was no way I could solve it, so he was smirking. Michael, a Kyoto University graduate, was also laughing and mocking me. I hesitated for a moment, then started working through the equations in my head. I solved it. The Maclaurin series expansion for log 1 plus x, the answer is -1. What? Did you solve that in your head? Who is this guy? I thought he was a high school dropout. Brian and Michael were making a fuss. They were probably wondering how someone like me could solve a difficult math problem. My name is David Smith, a 26-year-old man. I recently secured a job. But I'm just working as a temp. As an unskilled worker, I couldn't land a full-time position. I've been assigned to a large IT company. It seems to be a very busy place, where they can't manage without temp workers. Everyone was intensely focused on their monitors, and the desks were littered with energy drinks, showing just how busy it was. I was worried about being assigned to such a demanding company. The atmosphere was heavy and somber, and no one was chatting idly. I understood that the workplace isn't a place for socializing, so there was no time for idle chatter, but it didn't seem friendly or open either. But as a temp worker, I had no say in the company culture. All I could do was perform the tasks assigned to me. When I went to greet Brian on my first day, he looked at me and laughed. "Are you David, the temp starting today? Do your best, we're very busy here. Although, I doubt someone like you can handle it." Yeah. Aren't you a high school dropout? Why would they send a dropout here? Everyone here is a graduate of elite universities. They're all from national colleges or reputable private ones. The temp agency must be out of their minds. I'll do my best, thank you. Sure. Try your best. Not that I expect much. I thought he seemed mean. Actually, he was mean. I came here determined to do my best, so why did he have to talk to me like that? Starting off with such negativity was really disheartening. I was shown to my seat, which the previous occupant had left in a terrible state. The desk was a mess, with dirt and stains everywhere. I was so frustrated by how filthy the desk was that I wanted to ask the previous user what they did to make it this dirty. There were coffee stains, eraser shavings, and blue and black ink smudges, possibly from leaking pens. There were also what looked like snack crumbs, making it extremely unsanitary, so I borrowed some alcohol spray and scrubbed the desk clean. Even though I couldn't remove all the stains, it looked a bit better. Next to me sat a man named Michael. He had oily side-parted hair and wore a slim suit. He had good looks, like someone you might see in a movie. Michael explained the tasks I needed to do, and I got started. "Well, someone like you probably can't handle this, though." What he said made me feel bad. It's true that I'm at the bottom. I've drifted from job to job without a solid work history. As a temp worker drifting from job to job at my age, I must seem like the lowest of the low to the full-time employees at large companies. But I thought it was unnecessary to say that at first meeting. Annoyed, but grateful for the instructions, I quietly got to work. The tasks were straightforward and monotonous, so I started feeling drowsy. Staring at the monitor for so long made my mind feel foggy and my eyes tired. I managed to complete my assigned tasks on the first day and went home. The next day, I was pleasantly surprised to learn they were holding a welcome party for me. I felt a bit happy, thinking maybe even someone like me was being welcomed. There were other temp workers too, and it seemed like the party was for all of us, but the others were mostly part-time housewives. I was the only man and felt a bit embarrassed, but I appreciated being welcomed. Excited about which restaurant we would go to, I worked hard that day. The welcome party was held at a nice izakaya. The housewives mentioned they rarely had the chance to drink outside due to family responsibilities, so they were happy to enjoy the event. They probably left all the household duties to their husbands for the evening. As a single person, I didn't mind staying out late, but I realized how tough it must be for housewives with families. The food at the party was lavish. Even though it was an izakaya, it was a fancy one, serving sashimi with whole fish and fatty tuna. When I tried to eat some fatty tuna, Michael quickly snatched it away and smiled mockingly. "Then, this is too good for a high school dropout," he said, eating it with relish. I thought, what a jerk, and felt angry. When I tried to eat some silver-skinned fish, Brian took it all with his chopsticks and ate it gleefully. The silver-skinned fish here is amazing. The texture is perfect. Beer and sashimi after work are the best. Oh, sorry, did you want some? My bad. Oh, no, it's fine. A high school dropout like you shouldn't be eating this anyway. Here, have some garnish, like this radish. It's delicious. No, thanks. How about this chrysanthemum, then? No, thanks. Brian kept offering me the garnish and the chrysanthemum from the sashimi. I didn't want to eat that, and it made me angry to think he was doing it on purpose to be mean. Why did I have to be treated this way at a welcome party? They were kind to the other temp workers but cold to me. They must think a male temp worker is the lowest of the low. Maybe that's how society sees it. There's a tendency to believe men should work full-time and be strong breadwinners. Even though I think everyone should have their own way of working, that old-fashioned view still lingers. Brian was drinking heavily and was very drunk. He probably had around 5 bottles of beer, and I was worried just watching him. Michael was also drinking a lot and was already quite drunk. I thought it was ridiculous that they were getting drunk at a party meant for the temp workers. The two of them started bragging about their past achievements, acting all superior. Apparently, Brian graduated from the University of Tokyo and Michael from Kyoto University. They were comparing their entrance exam scores. Brian boasted about scoring 85% on the math section of the common test, while Michael said he got 95% in math and English on the center test. Listening to their intellectual boasting was boring, and the other temp workers looked very uncomfortable. Brian was about 55 years old, and Michael was 36. It was sad to see them bragging about past glories at their ages. But they probably didn't realize how pathetic they seemed and kept bragging. I originally studied science but switched to humanities, so I'm good at math. That's why I scored 85% on the math section of the common test. Even though I'm a humanities student. And I got a perfect score in English too. That's impressive, Brian. You're the best. Oh, come on, Michael, flattery won't get you anywhere. No, seriously, it's amazing. Being good at math even after switching to humanities. And you graduated from the University of Tokyo. And you graduated from Kyoto University, the pride of the West. There's no way we can beat the University of Tokyo. That's not true. Kyoto University is the best in Kansai. And it's known for its liberal atmosphere, producing all kinds of geniuses and unique characters. Well, there are certainly a lot of quirky people. We have costume graduations and even hot pot parties during classes. The University of Tokyo has more of the bookworm types, so it's a bit different, but both are great universities. And Sarah, you graduated from a good university too, right? Ha! Suddenly addressed, Sarah, a woman holding a Kalpas sour, placed it on the table. She looked puzzled. Sarah, didn't you graduate from the School of Engineering Science at Osaka University? Were there few girls? Yes, that's right. Engineering is usually full of men. Yes, there are many men. Sarah graduated from Osaka University with a degree in science. That means there are 3 graduates from former imperial universities here. As expected from a top-tier company, the employees' educational backgrounds are impressive. The University of Tokyo is Japan's top university, Kyoto University is the leading national university in Kansai. And Osaka University is a former imperial university known for its strong science programs. I'm sure if I look around, I'll find more graduates from other former imperial universities or prestigious private universities. Among the temp staff, there might be someone who is now primarily a housewife but actually graduated from Keio University or Waseda University. I had heard rumors that we had to be smart to be sent to this company, so I assumed that was the case. Then Brian looked at me and started saying something mean with a grin. Hey David, are you good at math? I think I'm okay. He says he's okay. A high school dropout who says he's good at math. Being good at math means graduating from an engineering department. A high school dropout's idea of being good at math is probably solving quadratic equations. Yes, as a high school dropout, his level is probably just quadratic equations and linear functions. Michael laughed obnoxiously. I didn't understand what was so funny. I was just answering seriously, not joking around. I was really good at math in school, so that's what I said. Then Brian took out paper and a pen from his bag and started writing something. It turned out to be a math problem. Can you solve this? It's a tough one. If you solve it, I'll give you my position, you high school dropout. Ha, there's no way he can solve that. Brian, that's too mean. Come on, Michael. He'll never solve it anyway. I quickly responded. No, this is not difficult. What? Are you kidding? This is a really tough problem. No, I'll solve it right now, just give me a few seconds. Is this guy serious? You're nuts, you can't solve it in your head. What are you talking about? I solved it. The Maclaurin series expansion for log 1 plus x, the answer is -1. What? Did you solve that in your head? Who is this guy? I thought he was a high school dropout. He really solved it in his head. And the answer is correct? What the hell? This doesn't make any sense. Brian and Michael looked at me in shock. I felt a bit proud and almost started humming. Wow! David, you really are good at math. Solving such a tough problem in seconds, you're a genius. Who are you really? Tell us. The beautiful Sarah approached me, eager to know my true identity. I decided to reveal it. Well, I'm actually the engineer who founded Megacorp in the US. What? Megacorp, the famous SNS company? Yes, that's right. Megacorp, the company behind Instant and Faceline. What? Are you saying this guy is the founder of that famous Megacorp? I don't believe it. Whether you believe it or not is up to you, but I really am the founder of Megacorporation. Though, I left the company for various reasons. So, did you graduate from a famous university and hide it to work here as a temp? No, I dropped out of high school, the American equivalent. I stopped attending middle school and couldn't go back. So you lived in the US? Yes, I was born and raised in the US. No way. He's a returnee student. Yes, I was a returnee student. Although I was born and raised in America and I didn't really feel like Japan was my home country, technically, I was a returnee. My parents ran a business in the US, so I was born in New York. I had friends until elementary school, but when I entered high school, I was bullied by the jocks. Jocks are the popular, outgoing types at the top of the social hierarchy. Mostly, they were on the rugby team and were big and strong. Being small and skinny, I became a target for the jocks, who would hide my things and verbally abuse me in the locker room. After such experiences, I started hating school. There was nothing enjoyable about going to school, so I began skipping classes. My parents were worried but didn't force me to go to school, they just watched over me. By 8th grade, I had completely stopped attending school and stayed home. My main companion at that time was the computer my parents bought me out of concern. I learned programming by trial and error and made my own games. I also thought it would be fun to create a website where people could vote on who was the most handsome or beautiful. The jocks who bullied me weren't particularly good looking. I thought it would be interesting to see their reactions if they ranked lowest, so I created and published the site. At first, I thought it would be nice if even a few people were interested, but the site became unexpectedly popular. And soon everyone at my school was using it. That site became Faceline, a SNS. Initially, it was just for comparing faces at my school, but other schools also wanted to join, so I made it public. Gradually, Faceline gained popularity, and many people started using it. Now, it's used worldwide, but it started as something I made for fun. I also created Instant, a photo-sharing SNS. I liked photography, influenced by my father, who often used a camera. During a visit to Japan, I saw women joyfully taking photos of food with their phones. At first, I wondered why they were photographing food, but I realized Japanese food is cute. The presentation and decoration are elaborate, unlike the large servings of desserts in America. I thought a photo-sharing SNS might become popular in Japan, so I created Instant. As expected, it became popular in Japan. Initially, American celebrities used it to share snippets of their lives, inspiring Japanese women to post their own glamorous lifestyles. They shared pictures of their parties, beach outings, and stays at luxury hotels. There were plenty of delicious-looking food and drinks in these photos. It seemed everyone loved photographing food. This became popular when I was 16. By then, I had already dropped out of school, which is the equivalent of a high school dropout in Japan. At 16, I had my own company and could live comfortably. In America, high school dropouts often have to live in poverty. But I was lucky enough to have a knack for business, so I avoided that fate. My parents were initially worried, but seeing my business succeed reassured them. As a result of my success in business, I received offers from Harvard and Stanford to join them as a professor. They wanted me to teach programming in the engineering department and business strategies in the economics department. But I wasn't comfortable speaking in front of people, and those jocks had gotten into those universities through recommendations. So I declined the offers. One day, when everything was going smoothly, my father suddenly passed away in an accident. He was hit by a drunk driver on his way home from work. My mother and I were devastated and had to discuss what to do next. Without my father, the business he ran was over. There were tasks only he could handle, so we decided to close the business. I felt numb and couldn't manage Megacorp anymore, so I handed it over to someone else. Looking back, I think I didn't need to give up the company. Running a SNS company can be done from anywhere. My mother and I decided to return to Japan, but I could have continued the company even after returning to Japan. After all, I had been working from home even when I was in the US. When I returned to Japan at 18, I was met with harsh reality. In Japan, the new graduate card is powerful, and deviating from the path is not acceptable. Dropouts, job hoppers, those who took gap years or repeated years, all faced harsh judgment. Unlike the US, where you can succeed with your skills alone, I felt stifling with its need for conformity in Japan. Having handed over Megacorp, I registered with a temp agency to work in Japan. The temp agency staff looked at my resume and half-laughingly asked if I was really the founder of Megacorporation. They probably didn't believe me. I kept saying, that company was mine. Haha, sure. I felt a bit offended by their dismissive laughter. Realizing that no one would believe a teenager could create such a thing, I decided to play the role of a high school dropout. There was no point in bragging about my impressive background, so I decided to do my best as an underdog. So, I have been playing the role of a high school dropout. I did drop out, but I have plenty of assets. By the way, Brian, you studied science before switching to law at the University of Tokyo, right? That's why you're good at science and working in this IT company? Yeah, that's right. Then math should be easy for you. And Michael, you graduated from Kyoto University with a degree in science, so this should be simple for you too. Well. I borrowed Brian's paper and pen and quickly wrote a math problem. Brian and Michael were struggling with the problem, groaning. If it's greater than 3, there's no integer solution, so this won't work. No, it works if it's 2. Damn it, what's going on? How are we supposed to prove this? I thought, they can't even solve this simple problem, and watched them with a smirk. It might seem mean, but since Brian and Michael had been the ones to bully me first, I felt it was fair to enjoy their struggle. The other temp workers watched Brian and Michael rack their brains, smirking in amusement. They might have thought, these guys aren't so great after all. Then Sarah, the Osaka University graduate, muttered quietly. Wait, you can't solve this? Isn't that bad? Sarah. So, can you solve it, Sarah? Yes, let me see it. Assuming square root 3 is a rational number, then, and substituting these back into the original equation. Sarah solved the problem I had given her quickly and effortlessly. She seemed to be genuinely enjoying herself. I thought she must be a true science enthusiast. I had learned programming, engineering, statistics, science, mathematics, computer science, and business on my own, so I wasn't very confident. But I felt I was at least better than Brian and Michael. When Sarah finished solving the problem, she asked me how she did. Since her answer was correct, I told her, that's correct, and she looked very pleased. Yay! I'm so happy. That was fun, David. No, but still, it's amazing you could solve that so quickly, Sarah. You're incredible. Oh no, I'm not as good as you, David. I was a bit nervous, wondering if I was remembering how to prove it correctly. But you got the right answer, so be confident. Yes. Thank you. It felt like being a student again, and I had a lot of fun. No problems. I thank you. As Sarah and I chatted happily, Brian and Michael looked frustrated. Maybe they had been interested in Sarah. But Michael aside, Brian was already married. It was pretty creepy for a married man like him to have feelings for a woman in her 20s. The welcome party ended, but Brian and Michael had gloomy expressions. Maybe they were upset about not solving the problem, or perhaps they were saddened by Sarah's comment about their inability to solve it. Either way, they looked pitiful. I started to feel a bit sorry for Brian and Michael, but I knew showing pity wouldn't help, so I looked at them coldly. Later, Brian and Michael got reprimanded by the bosses for their harassment towards me. This company was strict about moral conduct, and such behavior was severely punished. Brian was demoted. Michael had subordinates, but he was eventually replaced by one of them and is now sidelined. I continued working as a temp for another year. Then, the company offered me a full-time position, and I accepted. By that time, Brian had been transferred to a remote location due to another issue, and Michael had quit because he couldn't stand being sidelined. This made the work environment much more comfortable for me. Sarah, meanwhile, was very capable, worked hard, and even got promoted. She also advocated for changes to improve the company atmosphere, like banning unpaid overtime and punishing harassment, making the workplace much brighter. Thanks to your efforts, Sarah, the company has really changed. Even though you're busy with work, you still do so much for everyone. Thank you. Not a problem, it's important for me to have a good environment. But isn't it tough? Doing all these things while working? Not at all. I really wanted to change things. You see, I was bullied too. What? I couldn't say it at the welcome party, but I was bullied until high school. People called me gloomy and weird, so I could hardly go to school. But I wanted to prove them wrong, so I focused on studying. And you got into a national university, Sarah. You're really smart. No, not really. You're the smart one, David, doing everything self-taught. It turned out Sarah had also been bullied. She wasn't always as cheerful as she is now and had been considered gloomy. In high school, she was bullied by the popular girls and had a hard time every day. But she didn't give in, attending school minimally and studying hard at home. Her family wasn't wealthy, so they couldn't afford to send her to supplemental classes or private universities. She had to get into a national university. She aimed for Osaka University, the closest national university she could commute to from home. Sarah and I grew closer, and we decided to visit her family during the next summer break. Her family's house was indeed old and run down, but her parents were kind and wonderful people. Growing up in such a warm household, it was clear why Sarah was so kind. Hearing her speak in her native Osaka dialect, which she usually didn't use, felt special. It was like seeing a side of her only I knew. We started dating and, a year later, we got married. It might seem like a miracle that someone like me, without even a high school diploma, could end up with a university graduate like her. Even after our marriage, she continued to work hard, earning as much as any man. I didn't want her to overwork herself and once told her, if it gets too tough, you can quit your job. I'll take care of us. But she never considered quitting. However, a year after our marriage, one morning, she looked unwell. I thought she might be overworking herself. Thanks to her efforts, there was no overtime, but the workload had increased. Finishing everything within working hours became crucial, making the job more intense. Hey, you don't look so good. Maybe you should see a doctor? No, I'm fine. A good breakfast will fix me right up. But I'm really worried about you. You worry too much about everything. Don't underestimate me. Alright, if you say so. Even though she put on a brave face, after breakfast, Sarah ran to the bathroom. I got really worried and rushed to the bathroom, then took her to the hospital. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with her stomach and gave her an IV drip. I wondered what it could be, so I checked online and saw the word pregnancy, and I thought that might be the case. I decided to take the day off and take her to a gynecologist. That's when we found out she was pregnant. She was already 3 months pregnant, and the baby seemed to be growing well. I was overjoyed at the thought of becoming a dad. We're going to have a new member to the family, Sarah said with happy tears in her eyes. She worked up until the very end of her pregnancy and then gave birth to our child. Once she entered the stable phase of her pregnancy, her health improved, allowing her to work. Her recovery after childbirth was smooth, and she quickly regained her strength. It was probably because she was still in her 20s. In my teenage years, I never imagined I'd find such happiness. Back when I was struggling at school, I felt hopeless, thinking nothing good would ever come. After my father's accident and our move to Japan, I was filled with the sadness of never being able to return to America. In Japan, I decided to live as an underdog and took jobs considered lowly. I worked as a traffic controller and a restroom cleaner. But these jobs, while often looked down upon, are essential for a comfortable life. When I worked these jobs, I'd go into convenience stores and hear high school girls saying I smelled or was dirty. But without people doing traffic control or cleaning, everyone would be in trouble. They only wanted clean jobs, but it's the so-called lowly jobs that allow everyone to live well. Even when I was temping at various companies, I always felt excluded. I was often told, you can't do this because you're just a temp, or that temps were incompetent, which hurt. I used to think that if only I had a degree, I wouldn't be in this situation, but it was too late for that. The past can't be changed, so I had to live with my reality. But how about now? I'm surrounded by family and incredibly happy. I've never felt more blessed in my life. Sure, there were tough times, but the joy of living outweighs them. It's important to never give up, no matter how hard life gets. Things will work out. I plan to keep working hard at this company, and I want to make sure that if someone without a degree joins, they won't be discriminated against. I know how it feels to be treated that way, and I don't want to do it to others. I'm looking forward to seeing who comes in for interviews, as I've been appointed an interviewer. I plan to focus on their true potential. I'll do it instead of Alex. Ha! You? Explaining in English? No way. You're just a high school dropout. But if you insist, well, I guess you can give it a try. Michael, the manager, said this, clearly mocking me. I quietly stepped forward and suddenly started giving a speech to the foreign visitors. In English, of course. Thank you for coming to our company today. My name is Mike, and I will be giving you an overview of our company. As I said this, Michael's eyes widened. Alex and the rest of our team were also surprised. So, let's get started with the explanation. With that, I began my talk. My name is Mike, and I'm 35 years old. Even though I only have a middle school education, I work at a major multinational company. It's honestly a stroke of luck that someone like me, a high school dropout, could land a job at such a big company. These days, it's almost certain that only those with decent college degrees can get a job here. It's clear that someone like me, with just a middle school education, wouldn't easily get hired. In fact, the chance of getting rejected in an interview would be almost 100%. So I never imagined I'd be able to join such a prestigious company. My life has been a bit different, and I've had some unique experiences. My mother passed away when I was young. My father had a job, but he was a heavy drinker, often too drunk to go to work. As you can imagine, our household finances were strained. But as a kid, there was nothing I could do about it. When I was about to graduate from middle school, my homeroom teacher, Mr. Smith, said, "You're smart, you should go to high school," but I replied, "I'd like to, but we don't have the money." Mr. Smith tried to think of ways to help, but nothing worked out. If my dad hadn't been like that, I could have gone to high school. If my mom had been alive, my dad wouldn't have ended up this way. These thoughts were always on my mind. Of course, dwelling on it didn't change anything, so it was pointless. However, I couldn't help but blame someone. Right after middle school, I started working at a steel factory. I worked there for about 5 years. I saved up the money I earned at the factory and decided to leave home. Well, leaving home was more like going on a solo trip for a while, but I planned to return home after the trip. I intended to travel until I ran out of money. In the end, it lasted a few years. I think I traveled around for about 3 years. I remember those days fondly. I sometimes think back on those times. Life was never easy, but I experienced a lot. Since joining this company, my life has become stable, and I'm fairly satisfied with how things are. I'm really proud to have joined such a big company, despite only having a middle school education. One night, our team leader, Alex, told me that our current manager, James, would be retiring at the end of the month. James has been here since I joined the company. Oh man, I've been under him since I started. It's going to be sad to see him go. Alex, who said this, is my team leader. He's in his late 30s and has gotten a bit chubby. He jokes, saying, "You can't lose weight once you hit middle age," but he's a cheerful person who laughingly says things like that. Has James been here that long? Yeah, 15 years ago, he was still a section chief. But he's been in the same department the whole time. We were really happy when he became the manager because he really cared about his subordinates. Alex sighed, looking disappointed. Do they already know who's going to be the next manager? Well, it's not decided yet, but there's a rumor that Michael might take over. If it's him, I might quit, Alex said with a wry smile. Why's that? I've heard he's caused problems in various places. You wouldn't want someone like that here, would you? That's true. Apparently, he graduated from Cambridge, and he has a thing against people with lower educational backgrounds. So if Michael transfers here, you better watch out too. Hearing that gave me a bad feeling.
Soon after, James retired, and a new manager came.
Alex's prediction was spot on. Michael arrived.
Michael is a so-called elite who graduated from Cambridge University.
He is in his 50s but looks a bit older. He was tall, skinny, and had a nervous-looking face. Hello, everyone.
I'm Michael, and I'll be in charge of this department starting today.
After graduating from the prestigious Cambridge University, I joined this company. From now on, I won't tolerate any slackers in this department. Let's work together to build a great team. Michael made an intimidating introduction.
I looked over at Alex, who was clearly uninterested, massaging the right side of his neck with his left hand.
Noticing this, Michael shouted, "Hey! You, the one slacking off. Step forward." Everyone turned to see Alex. In that moment, I thought,
Alex has become the first target.
Alex looked surprised but stepped forward as instructed. Listen up, everyone.
While I was speaking, this guy was massaging his shoulder.
Don't become a slacker like him. I despise lazy people. What's your name? Alex. I see. I'll remember you. You can go back now. Alex returned to his seat, looking dejected.
From then on, Michael started picking on Alex for various reasons, giving him unreasonable tasks and making sarcastic comments.
One day, Alex caught a viral infection and was out of the office for about a week.
During that time, Michael seemed bored as he had no target to harass.
He came to my desk and said, "So, why do you think Alex is like that? Why do you think he's so lazy?"
Alex may seem that way, but he's a hard worker.
Are you joking? You've seen how he normally is, right?
No, he may act that way, but Alex is genuinely good at his job.
I respect him.
Hearing this, Michael's eyes narrowed, and he said,
You respect someone like that? What's your name? Even though it had been 3 months since his transfer and he didn't know his subordinates' names, I answered curtly. Mike. I see. Michael then returned to his office. Eventually, Alex recovered and came back to the department. Good morning. Alex greeted everyone. Are you feeling better, Alex? Did you get enough rest? It must have been tough, right? Everyone in the department greeted him. Then Michael appeared. Good morning.
Everyone was so focused on talking to Alex that no one noticed Michael.
Michael got annoyed and he approached Alex. Then he said, Oh, Alex. I didn't realize you were still with the company. I thought you might have retired. Hearing this, I couldn't help but blurt out, You don't talk to someone who's just recovered from an illness like that. Michael turned to me and said, You always have to talk back, don't you? I don't like that. Subordinates should follow their superiors, right? There are things I can follow and things I can't. I can't follow this. Hey, Mike, it's okay. I'm not bothered, and you shouldn't.
Alex tried to stop me, but it was too late. Michael, now furious, said,
Your name is Mike, right?
You'll regret this later, and stormed back to his office.
From then on,
Alex was no longer the target.
I was. Michael started picking on my work at every opportunity.
Just recently, he complained about something like this.
Mike, come here for a moment. Yes? The documents you sent to X Corporation were wrong, weren't they?
No, they were correct. No, they were wrong.
Why can't you admit your mistakes? I attached the documents that you approved, Michael. Are you blaming your mistake on me?
This comment infuriated me, but I thought it was pointless to argue, so I stayed silent. I had double-checked those documents and had Michael approve them before sending them to X Corporation.
Seeing me stay silent, Michael said, I heard you're a high school dropout. How did you manage to sneak into this company? What?
A big company like ours wouldn't hire a trashy high school dropout like you.
Did you use some connections? He looked at me with a mocking smile.
This has nothing to do with work, so I'll take my leave,
I said and walked out of his office. Returning to my desk, I reviewed the documents Michael had pointed out.
To my shock, the documents for X Corporation had been switched with those of another company. There was no way I could have missed such a mistake. It was clear that someone had deliberately swapped the files. And the only person who could do that was Michael. But I had no proof. I was furious but decided to endure it for the time being. That evening, Alex invited me out for a drink. After work, we left the office and went to a small nearby bar. We started with a beer and toasted each other. After ordering various dishes and finishing our meal, Alex started talking. "Mike, are you okay?" "Okay? About what?" "You know, about Michael." "Oh. When I came back to work, you stood up for me. I was worried that Michael might be giving you a hard time because of it." "Well, yeah, he has been." "Weren't you also scolded by Michael over the X Corporation incident recently?" Alex asked, so I explained to him what had happened that day. "That's awful. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" I suspected that the files had been swapped, but I had no proof. "What are you talking about?" "Only a supervisor could access a subordinate's computer to change files. No one else could do that without using an individual's account." "That's true, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it." "Yeah, with Michael, you never know what he might do. But if you have any trouble, come to me. I am your team leader, after all." I was really grateful for Alex's support. Since the next day was a day off, we drank a lot that night. About 2 weeks later, it was announced that foreign visitors would be coming to our company. During the morning meeting, Michael seemed to be in a good mood and said, "Good morning, everyone. I have some good news. It was decided in yesterday's meeting that next month we will have foreign visitors coming to see our company. Everyone, make sure you can speak at least a bit of English. When the guests arrive, I want you to guide them in English." After saying that, Michael added, "Well, I graduated from Cambridge University, so I can speak English, but for those who can't, start studying intensively from today until next month." Whether Michael could actually speak English or not, his constant bragging about Cambridge annoyed me. On the day the foreign visitors were to arrive, everyone was nervous. As I was reviewing the materials for the presentation, Michael entered the office with the visitors. There were 30 visitors. More than I had expected. Michael cheerfully said, "Good morning, everyone." His childlike display of, "I can speak English," was tiresome. The visitors were from various countries. During the tour, an Indian man named Ahmed approached me. Ahmed, in his 30s, mentioned he had a wife and kids back home. He said he wanted to move to Japan someday and work for a Japanese company. Ahmed had been studying Japanese diligently to achieve that goal. His Japanese was nearly perfect. There were a few distinctive Indian accents, but nothing that made it hard to understand. "Isn't Japanese difficult?" "Very difficult. I thought about quitting many times. But going to Japan is my dream," he said with a big smile. After the tour, we moved to a large conference room. Even though it was called a large room, it could only hold about 35 people. So they started selecting employees from the department to attend the meeting. "Since we have a limited number of spots, we'll choose 5 people from this group. Let's select by teams." Our department had 25 people, divided into 5 teams. Michael looked around the department. The moment our eyes met, he smirked and said, "All right, let's have Alex's team do it." My bad feeling was confirmed. I glanced at Alex, who also looked reluctant. The other team members looked equally miserable as they stood up and moved to the front. As I got up and moved forward, Michael leaned in and whispered, "Make sure you don't embarrass me." After everyone settled in the conference room, Michael said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my company." Michael was clearly enjoying himself. But in my mind, I was thinking, it's our company, not my company. I wondered if he really graduated from Cambridge, given such a basic mistake. As I was pondering this, Michael said, "Now, to continue, you there. You explain in English," pointing at Emily. Emily was the only woman in my team who was 30 and single. When the presentation was announced, she had said, "I'm terrible at English." Emily reluctantly stepped forward. However, Emily couldn't speak English well. She nervously whispered to Michael,
"I'm sorry, Michael. I'm really bad at English."
Michael, looking exasperated, said, "I asked Emily because she's the only woman in Alex's team."
What a pathetic team. Very disappointing. Well,
I guess we'll have to rely on the team leader, Alex.
Michael smirked. He knew Alex was also bad at English. I remembered overhearing a conversation between Alex and Michael. "Michael, can I have a word?" "What is it?"
Regarding the upcoming presentation for the foreign visitors, no one in our team is good at English. It would be smoother if another team handled it, and it would also reduce the pressure on our team members.
It's pathetic that you can't even speak English these days. Why do you even come to work? Well, all right. I don't want to be embarrassed either. I'll think about it. Thank you.
I happened to overhear this while coming back from the restroom. It must have been humiliating for the usually strong Alex to ask Michael for such a favor. But Alex was thinking about the team and swallowed his pride to ask Michael.
Michael ignored Alex's request and chose his team anyway. It seemed like harassment to me. Alex looked bewildered when Michael singled him out. I couldn't stand it any longer and stood up from my chair. "I'll do it instead of Alex." Michael sneered at me and said, "Ha! You? Explaining in English? No way. You're just a high school dropout. But if you insist, well, I guess you can give it a try." Michael was clearly mocking me.
I quietly stepped forward and suddenly started giving a speech to the foreign visitors.
In English, of course. "Thank you for visiting our company today. My name is Mike, and I will give you an overview of our company." Michael's eyes widened in surprise. Alex and the rest of the team were also shocked. Let's get started with the explanation. With that, I began my presentation. At the end, I asked, "Are there any questions?" One Arab man spoke up in broken English I didn't understand well. I responded in Arabic, "Assalamu alaikum," and then explained in Arabic. The Arab man smiled and said, "MashaAllah. Thank you, brother. Your Arabic is amazing. I've never seen a Japanese person speak it so well." A French visitor then asked, "Can you speak French?" I replied, "Yes, I can," and switched to explaining in French. Next, a Spanish visitor, followed by a German, each asked, and I ended up giving the presentation in 5 different languages. Everyone was staring at me with their mouths open. Finally, Ahmed said, "Mike, that's amazing. Can you speak Hindi too?" I laughed and said, "No, I'm afraid not." Ahmed laughed and said, "I thought so." Then he asked curiously, "By the way, earlier Michael said, 'my company.' Is this his company?" This question snapped Michael out of his daze, and he quickly replied, "No, it's not my company." Ahmed looked shocked and said, "What? You're a liar. You said 'my company' before." He then explained to the other visitors in English. It seems this is not his company. The visitors began murmuring amongst themselves. What does this mean? Why did he lie? So, whose company is it? Michael, flustered, said, "Wah, what is happening?" I turned to Michael and said, "Michael, you said 'my company.' That makes everyone think you're the owner. You should have said 'our company.'" I didn't say that. Another lie. This man is a liar. I understand Japanese. You lied. You're a bad person. I'm not lying. And you were so mean to that woman and man earlier. They can't speak English, but your English is terrible too. You're a bad person. Treating your colleagues badly is not good. I saw everything. Ahmed, understanding Japanese, realized how Michael had been treating Emily and Alex. You're terrible. At that moment, the door to the conference room opened, and Mr. Thompson, the company president, walked in. Seeing Mr. Thompson, Michael immediately bowed and said, "Mr. Thompson." I was curious about how the presentation was going. What is all this commotion? Michael, panicking, lied, the presentation just ended, and we were all having a chat.
Ahmed, now furious, said. "You
liar! I am angry. The presentation is not over. I was talking, but you didn't answer. What's going on?" Hearing this, Mr. Thompson demanded an explanation from Michael. But Michael just kept making excuses.
Mr. Thompson, getting angry, said,
"Michael, enough of this nonsense." Well. Frustrated by Michael's evasive answers, Mr. Thompson said, "That's enough. Is there anyone here who can explain this situation?" and looked around.
The moment he saw me, he said,
"Oh, Mike. How have you been?" "I'm fine, thank you." "You look well, too, Mr. Thompson." "How is John?" "Oh, both John and I are doing well. He's still wandering around, doing whatever he likes," Mr. Thompson said with a laugh.
Everyone looked puzzled by this exchange. Noticing this, Mr. Thompson introduced me to everyone.
"Mike here saved my son's life
about 12 or 13 years ago. I had grown tired of my monotonous life in Japan and, more importantly, wanted to get away from my alcoholic father. So, I quit the factory where I had worked for 5 years and used my savings to travel around the world.
During my travels, I met John in Egypt. John's family owned a major multinational company.
Initially, he worked there, but during a family trip to Thailand,
he was exposed to different cultures and decided to travel alone to experience more. I told John
I was traveling to escape my daily life.
Meeting another Japanese person in Egypt was rare. John and I quickly became friends. We spent many enjoyable days together. The day before we were to leave Egypt for Spain, I got a call from John. He sounded panicked and spoke quickly. "Mike, something terrible has happened." "What happened?"
I got into a taxi, but it seems to be taking me somewhere completely different. I said this isn't the way to Cairo, but the driver ignored me.
"What should I do?"
John was clearly very scared.
"John, first, calm down. What can you see around you?" "I see a road sign. It looks like we're heading towards Helwan." Hearing this, I quickly grabbed a taxi and headed for Helwan.
As we talked, I heard someone in the background speaking Arabic, saying, "Show me your belongings." I became anxious and told the taxi driver,
"Hurry up." Then I thought about checking John's location via GPS.
I opened the GPS app and saw John's location displayed.
Using the GPS, I headed towards him.
I kept the phone conversation going, stalling the man next to John.
Eventually, I reached John's location.
At the same time, I had also contacted the police, and local officers arrived around the same time.
We successfully rescued John.
At that moment, John promised,
"When you return to Japan, I'll make sure to thank you." When I finally returned to Japan, I had completely forgotten to contact John.
Part of it was because I felt awkward reaching out to someone who felt indebted to me.
About a year after I returned, John called me.
He laughed and said, "You returned to Japan but didn't contact me."
"That's mean."
This led to John, the son of Mr. Thompson, introducing me to this company. "Mike is an extremely talented individual," Mr. Thompson said proudly, as if praising his own son.
Michael then interjected, but Mike is just a middle school graduate."
"I graduated from Cambridge University."
Mr. Thompson looked exasperated and said, "Michael, I despise prejudice.
Deciding someone's worth based on their school or lack thereof
is something I cannot tolerate."
Ahmed, overhearing this, suddenly joined the conversation and laughed.
"Michael, you graduated from Cambridge University? Your English is terrible. How rude you are." Michael retorted. Ahmed calmly responded, "The rude one is you, Michael.
You were mean to Mike. He didn't deserve that."
Mr. Thompson, hearing Ahmed's words, said,
"Ahmed, and all of our esteemed visitors, I apologize for the unpleasant experience. I would appreciate it if you could provide feedback on what happened today to help improve our company.
Please email me your thoughts."
He then handed out his business card to all the visitors, which included his direct email address. Within a week, Mr. Thompson received emails from all the foreign visitors.
"The skinny supervisor is useless and can't even speak proper English. The way he treats his subordinates is terrible.
I wouldn't want to work or do business with such a company. The guy who spoke 5 languages at the end should be the boss.
Why doesn't the company make such a talented person a leader?
Most of the emails criticized Michael's behavior or praised me. Seeing this, Mr. Thompson realized it would damage the company's image and decided to demote Michael.
Outraged, Michael declared,
"I won't be transferred, no matter what," and staged a strike in our department. Despite our and Mr. Thompson's attempts to persuade him, Michael refused to leave the office. Frustrated, Mr. Thompson contacted the police,
who eventually removed Michael from the premises. As a result, Michael was fired.
I felt an eerie sense of obsession from Michael, which scared me. At the same time, I truly realized that people don't change, no matter what happens. If he had quietly accepted the transfer, he wouldn't have been fired. Later, I heard that Michael tried to find a new job but couldn't, likely due to his age. Now, he works as a delivery man for a ramen shop in a neighboring city, according to a colleague who lives nearby.
The colleague laughed and said,
"Michael always bragged about graduating from Cambridge, but a dirty white apron suits him better." As for me, since that presentation, my evaluation improved, and I am now a supervisor in another department. I still occasionally go out for drinks with Alex, who remains in our old department and
is set to be promoted to manager this spring.
I thought, it would be great to have someone like Alex as a boss.
Alex told me that since I transferred, Emily seemed to have lost some of her spirit.
She looked so down after you left, so I invited her to join us today,
Alex said with a grin. Thanks to Alex's matchmaking, Emily and I started dating.
A year has passed since then.
Emily and I are still together.
This weekend, I plan to propose marriage to her.
Alex has been secretly cheering us on.
I'm still a junior employee, but I intend to work hard and contribute to the company.
And I am determined to marry Emily and make her happy.